Yeah, you base it on your opinion. My opinion, though, is complicated because, like, for example, a great example is Black Flag. Black Flag as an Assassin's Creed game is probably like B or C. As of just a video game, especially at the time, it's like very, very good. It's easy for us to look back at it now and see the combat systems and stuff were a little rough, but it was on the 360 back in the day, and it was good. Sure, yeah, Rock, why don't you run a poll? Should I rank these as Assassin's Creed games or just as which games I think are better video games? The OG Assassin's Creed, I'd give it a C for innovation. Otherwise, it's like a D as a video game. It's like pretty slow, pretty clunky. Assassin's Creed 2, probably A. Rogue has got to be like ones. Actually, it's probably right up there with Black Flag. The only reason it's not higher is because it doesn't really do that much differently. But it's not lower because I think it has a more interesting story than Black Flag, and I think that gives it a boost. Liberation, it's been so long. It's been so long, I can't even. I think you got to give Rogue a little boost. Liberation, it's been so long. I'll just give it like a D. If it were better, I think I would remember it more clearly. Revelations, it's also been a while, but I remember it being like, like as a continuation. It's very samey from the previous formula. Probably B. Oh, this doesn't even have Valhalla on it. Yeah, this doesn't even have Valhalla on it. I thought it was missing something. Valhalla's probably going, like, just for the record, I'd probably put it in D tier. I think if it were half the length, I would probably put it a little higher. It would probably go maybe even B or C. Maybe. It's just that, like, it's got some good stuff, but then it overstays its welcome to a ridiculous degree. So because of that, it gets bumped down lower and lower and lower. But Brotherhood probably also same field as Revelations. Birds of a feather flock together. Assassin's Creed 3. This one is like really difficult for me to rank because 3 is a game of vision. Like the ambition with which they designed this game is very remarkable. However, it didn't really realize the vision as well as I think we would have liked to see it. And so, like, for example, they had this idea for the naval combat, which they would eventually use in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, right? That's in Assassin's Creed 3. There are ship sections in 3, but they're like really crappy and they're very short because they were just like prototypes basically. Or they wanted you to be able to run this whole like sort of gang empire. And yeah, restrained by ambition. You showed that down for somebody steals it. Yeah, exactly, Shane. It's like they tried to do so much stuff and they just couldn't do any of it really, really well. But they tried to do so much stuff, so many great ideas that eventually became like staples of the future games that it deserves some credit. But like I replayed this. I didn't replay all of the core game. I replayed it, like a good chunk of it for that Tyranny of King Washington video I made earlier in the year, or maybe late last year, I think it was, maybe around December, where I broke down the DLC for this game that was broken until relatively recently. And it's pretty stiff. Like, it's pretty stiff, but I don't know. It's a tricky one to rate for me. Rogue has such a unique narrative spin, especially within the franchise as a whole. It gets brownie points. It really does. But I think if I recall correctly, I think he's Irish. No, Rogue is, they released it the same year as Unity. This is what's weird. So Rogue and Unity launched in the same year. Rogue was released for like the 360 and PS3. Unity was their next gen game. And it's part of the reason a lot of people think Unity was so rough, because they had split the dev teams up so that half of them worked on Rogue, half of them worked on Unity, which meant that Unity didn't get the attention it needed to really get polished and refined. So yeah, it was a backdrop game, basically. Exactly, Bell. So it's really weird. This doesn't really happen nowadays, and the reason is because this didn't work very well. Rogue didn't sell very well. Unity was broken. So it's just not a good idea. So people stay away from doing this type of thing. But Rogue and Unity launched the same year, and a lot of people don't even realize that Rogue exists. In like the broader gaming populace, people don't really realize it. Same with like, Liberation. Not many people know about Liberation, like the DS games and stuff like that. But anyway, with that, Rogue I think gets some credit. I think it's at least on par with Black Flag if you haven't tried it. Unity is tricky, or 3. I didn't finish doing that. 3 I'd have to put like B. Unity is tricky because like you cannot overlook how broken it is. It's still pretty rough. Even when we did the I tried video on it, we ran into multiple bugs and glitches. It's still pretty clunky. As a co-op game, it's really good. Overall, I think it's worth playing again or playing period if you haven't played it before. But even on like a $5,000 gaming PC, it still runs like ass. So I would say if you haven't played it before, you should. But in terms of replaying it now, it's just kind of annoying. Because you want to get really into it, but it makes it kind of hard to get really into it. So I'd probably give this like C. The co-op is really fun, and it's actually worth going back and playing for its own sake. So I'd probably put that there. Three Brother Revelations. Yeah. Origins. I've been replaying this recently, actually. I'm gonna give Assassin's Creed 2 S tier, because I just freaking love that game. I'm biased. It was like the first. It was my first. But I think I gotta give that S tier. Origins, again, I'm biased. I love ancient Egypt. I say that very clearly at the outset. I am very partial towards the setting. It gets a ton of extra points from me for that. It has its own set of issues. But there's a lot that it does really well. The AI is really, really well done. Not many people talk about that, but the AI is actually pretty impressive in Origins. Same with Odyssey. Odyssey has pretty decent AI as well, where like guards collect the bodies of the people that you've killed, and then they start patrolling that zone more closely once they've noticed a dead body in it. Things like that. So I would say probably Origins for me. I think I'll put it B tier. Odyssey, I've been replaying it on the Steam Deck. Full disclosure. Because people like, it's so funny. If I compliment a game or if I criticize a game, there are people that come into the video comment section like, oh, says the guy that likes Odyssey. It's funny. It's funny to me. And so I went back and I've been replaying it because I'm like, am I just misremembering all of this? Like, yeah, I've got problems. The DLC for Odyssey is like atrocious. It's like bad. It's just bad. But like Origins, I played through the DLC, and like the Curse of the Pharaohs, I thought added a lot to it, made it interesting. You fight like King Tut graphically and artistically. It's like really, really cool. But like the Atlantis section in Odyssey is just a headache and a half to get through. But as a base game, it starts to drag on towards the end a good amount. But all told, I mean, the game is just freaking epic. And I mean that in terms of like the textbook definition of the word epic. It's just massive. And you're right, it can be a grind towards the end to get through it, because you have to be leveled up a certain point in order to progress to the ending of the story. But like, I'll be completely real. Grind to me is bad when, I guess we should define grind. Grind is when you have to engage in like tedious repetition of various activities in order to progress to carry on with something that's more engaging. With Odyssey, the grind at the end of the story is like, okay, I've got to run around and I've got to complete side quests and level up, you know? For me, I like, at least replaying it now, I really like the side quests. I look forward to the side quests. I almost enjoy the side quests more than the main story. So it doesn't really feel like that much of a grind to me. I know when I made my review back in the day, I was like, no, it's pretty aggressive, you know, but the quality for the first like 3/4 of the game is pretty high up there. You know what? I'm putting it A. I'm doing it. Syndicate. This one I think deserves a little bit more love. It got kind of shafted because Unity came out, gave Assassin's Creed a really rough name. You know, it just kind of tainted the whole thing. So a lot of people passed on Syndicate because they thought that it was going to be more Unity, right? For this, I think Syndicate, it does some things really interesting. It still doesn't run very well, I insist. It's kind of, it chugs even on PC, even on like the Series X, which I know that it hasn't had like a 60 FPS update, but it's still, it's a little bit of a it struggles. But I think it deserves more love than it gets. I also really like the setting, and the Jack the Ripper DLC and stuff like that is pretty fun. I wouldn't have paid full price for it back at launch, but you can get like the complete edition of Syndicate now, depending on where, for like 20-25 bucks. It's not bad. It's not bad. Much more doable. So I think I'll put that B tier. And we don't have Valhalla. Like I said, Valhalla is probably D for me. Give it the D. But I think, yeah, the OG, yeah, people, well, that makes me a criminal. I just think like when I'm ranking them as like what games I would like to play right now and how I would rank my enjoyment of them if I were playing right now and I had to pick one of these to play. I think it's been too long to remember this one. I'm just going to be real, so I'm not going to give it a high score or a low, like super low score, because I just don't really remember it. It's been too long. The OG Assassin's Creed is very clunky and slow moving. I think they evolved so much. I mean, you can see the difference in my opinion. Like AC2, S tier versus the original. I think that's a testament to Assassin's Creed 2, not necessarily a put down of Assassin's Creed 1, but I really think that they made a ton of progress from 1 to 2. So like I wouldn't be that excited to replay the original. But AC2 any day. I'll jump on that. Unity, there's parts of it I really like, and I've spoken at length about those before. But I think that Unity, it's just still a little clunky. Valhalla F tier. So the reason I wouldn't give Valhalla F tier is because like it's not a horrible game. Like it's not an awful, what I know I call it a travesty. I usually say a travesty of open world design. I think there's systems in there. It runs. you can have a really nice 20, 30 hours with it. Like Nikki's been having, my wife Nikki, she's been playing like Valhalla for the last couple weeks, and she's at like 35, 40 hours in. She's having a great time. You know, she still will call out like, yeah, this quest is really dragging on, but she's been having a good time. And I don't think you can like really piss on the game that much. I think if we were ranking this as Assassin's Creed games when they launched, like on launch day, this list changes. I mean, probably Assassin's Creed goes to like B, 2 goes to S, stays at S. Black Flag is probably more like S. Rogue is a little lower. Odyssey stays pretty high. 3, I think, drops. It had a bunch of technical issues at launch. Origins up higher. Unity is an F tier. You know, that changes it. But when we're talking about it with regards to like, as I want to play them now, this is what it looks like. Odyssey, so I'm ranking this Whisper just as what I would like to play right now, like in terms of my immediate impulse of what I would enjoy going through, and what I like more or less at this precise moment in history. So for me, like Odyssey just has a lot more varied side content. Yeah, we're not trying to be like super objective. I think if we were breaking these down again, like even with regards to what is the better Assassin's Creed game, again, this also changes. Because Assassin's Creed wise, of course, Odyssey is down low, Black Flag's low. Rogue, I think, is actually higher. It leans much more into the lore of Assassin's Creed than even Black Flag does. Because, of course, you start hunting down the assassins. It's really interesting. I think you have to put 3 up higher. Origins, again, lower. Syndicate, these guys. Of course, you got to give Assassin's Creed the OG pretty high. Unity as an Assassin's Creed game probably goes higher. Brotherhood probably goes higher. We might even do this. Like, you'd have to do something like this if we were ranking them as Assassin's Creed games, which are the best in the formula of Assassin's Creed. But that's not really what we're doing, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's my general thought process.